If you're actively looking for a job, this video is probably going to be relatable because there's nothing more frustrating than spending all this time filling out an application only to get your resume rejected almost immediately. And it can get you second guessing yourself, wondering if you're doing something wrong or if employers have suddenly determined that you're not hireable, or it gets you lashing out at recruiters and blaming them for all these issues. And judging from some of the comments I see in the channel, there's a palpable sense of frustration by the average job seeker. But I want you to keep something in mind. This is not a normal job market. Things are particularly difficult, and employers in particular have become extraordinarily picky with how they recruit and how they fill positions. The problem is because there are so many candidates, it is more and more difficult to get your resume seen, and it can seem like an impossible gauntlet to make it through a hiring process. And the chances are your resume actually isn't getting seen at all. So that's what we're going to cover in today's video. Why your resume is likely not getting seen, why you're getting so many of those rejections, and then more importantly, what you can do to fix it. Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Brian and I'm a corporate recruiter and a career strategist. And I've made it my mission to try to demystify how hiring and careers work from a corporate perspective. We're trying to level the playing field here. So if this kind of content interests you, make sure you hit that subscribe button. So why isn't your resume getting seen? And more importantly, what can we do about it? Well, some of you are probably familiar with getting insta-rejected. And that's when you apply for a job and within the first 12 hours to 24 hours, you're getting a rejection. And in some cases, I've seen them happen as quickly as 30 minutes later, which is a really poor candidate experience. And if you're getting these insta-rejections, what does that possibly mean? Well, it could mean that they already have a candidate in mind. And this means that they often will have a slate of candidates that might be moving through a process and they've already got somebody flagged or identified, or it could be an internal candidate who is already deep in their interview process. They may be even working through offer details with them, and you come in later in the process and they've already essentially closed the requisition down, but maybe they're still collecting applications for whatever reason. So they'll just assign you as a rejected status. Or it could mean that you're not passing a screen of some sort. And oftentimes the recruiter is going to be doing this manually, where they're looking at applications and going through. And like when I'm looking at applications, I'm actually looking at every single resume. And oftentimes it's very quick. You might only get a few seconds of glance, but I'm looking through resumes really quickly. And if there's something that's immediate no, you just get moved into the rejection pile and we move on to the next one. But with the proliferation of AI, more and more of these ATS companies are starting to use these tools to help auto screen people. And they pitch that it is a benefit to the job seeker because say there's 1,000 applications and the recruiter is only getting through the first 10% of them. It's like 100 people that they're screening for that role. Essentially anybody that's in the second bucket of candidates, the 100 through 200 or the 100 through 1,000 candidate, they're likely never going to get seen. With the AI, what these companies are pitching is that, well, we can screen everybody that comes in. It's both good and bad. It's good in that your resume is getting seen. It's bad, though, that it's not being seen by a human. And the thing about AI is it's usually coded either black or white. You either have it or you don't. And there's no room to interpret. So a recruiter can actually look through a resume and make some level of interpretation. Might not feel that way, but that actually indeed is the case. And I can't tell you the number of times where I've read into a resume, seen something that wasn't quite obvious, or a hiring manager read into a resume and said, actually, they do have this thing that we're looking for. It's just kind of worded differently. Or they say they have this industry and that's actually a good fit for us because it's related. And the AI is not going to necessarily know that. So it's like a good and bad thing that there's AI increasingly being used in the screening process. Thing is, AI is certainly going to be more efficient than a human in getting through a large volume of data quickly, and they may be assigning you statuses like rejected, even if a recruiter may have given you the thumbs up. You may have also failed a kickout question. And a kickout question is often a required question that you need to fill out as part of the application. And it doesn't even matter what your resume says. If you fail a kickout question, you're not going to move forward and you're going to get an auto reject. And usually the kickout question is going to be, are you at least 18 years of age, or are you legally eligible to work in this country? Or it might be something to do with like education requirements, but oftentimes you'll see a list of behavior-based questions or kickout questions that you have to type in an answer for. And some of them are programmed that if you don't have this or you do have that, then you're automatically kicked out. And that's why I'm not a big fan of these applicant tracking systems or these applications that recruiters will set up and put a bunch of questions in there that should be reserved for the interview. because essentially you're just screening yourself out. And again, that's kind of like a why employers are wasting your time. The most common reason though is that you're not a clear fit for the role that you're applying to. And I would say when I have a job that I post and I get 1,000 candidates, I am probably only getting about 25 to 50 people that are even remotely qualified for the job that they're applying to. Most people are just taking their shot. And especially if it's a remote role, you're getting applications from all over the globe for that single position. And so that means that it's a feeding frenzy for these jobs. And that's unfortunate for the person who's actually qualified because they're getting buried under a list of people who is just not at all aligned for the position that we're recruiting for. So let's talk about how recruiters recruit and how they actually screen resumes. As you know, almost every job has a job description associated with it. And here's the thing. The hiring manager is actually writing the job description. The recruiter is not, but the recruiter is getting awfully familiar with it by reading through it prior to opening up the recruitment. And they're probably going to write the job ad, but they're not actually writing the contents in the job description itself. But they're going to use that job description as a basis for what to look for. And then they'll sit down with the hiring manager and they'll go through what's called an intake call. And in that intake call, they'll meet with the hiring manager who will then clarify and fill in some of the blanks on the requirements of the position. The recruiter is going to ask them all the questions that are necessary. What kind of experience do they absolutely need versus what's nice to have? Which of these are requirements? What about their education? Is there any flexibility on some of these things? They may even clarify what companies or industries the person has to have worked in, and maybe some companies they don't want people to have worked in, because that's even a thing too. But basically what they're doing is they're creating an ideal candidate profile from this information, from the job description and from when they meet with the hiring manager. Now, what they will do is take that ideal candidate profile and then they'll start to go to market with it. So in other words, when they start to screen or assess resumes, they're using this ideal candidate profile and then comparing it to your resume. And do you match what it is that they're looking for? And they're scanning quickly here, guys. You might only get a few seconds, especially if they have to get through 1,000 applications for that one particular role, keeping in mind that they've likely got 15 to 20 other positions that they're also recruiting that are completely unrelated. So they're scanning, looking for relevant titles, relevant skills, relevant experiences. They're also looking for potential red flags that they would like to screen up because they know the hiring manager is going to call them out. Might be things like, and this is really unpopular, but the job hopping resumes often are flagged as a problem because we know we can't get them past the hiring manager. There might also be issues with certain skills or a piece of education or a lack of a degree in some cases where they know that they're just not going to be able to get the person past the hiring manager. And trust me, I'm fully aware of everybody's opinion on recruiters' abilities to look at resumes quickly and assess their fit for the position that they're recruiting for. The thing is, if you're a good fit for the job that you're applying to, you have to convey your fit quickly or you're going to end up in the no pile. And this is where people get very frustrated because you can be well aligned to the position at hand, but your resume is likely not showing you in that best fit. So if you get through the process where you're actually getting seen by a human being, hopefully that's the case, you have to make sure that your resume is clearly showing your fit for the role in a non-cluttered way. In other words, you don't want to use these outdated templates. You don't want to use huge blocks of text. You want to try to make things as concise and consolidated as you can because you only have a few seconds. And your goal here is to get into the yes pile. And you have to keep in mind the recruiter's goal. They have to try to get a slate of candidates in front of this hiring manager because they just got assigned 5 or 6 other jobs the same day. So they've got to do the same thing for those other 5 as well. So that means if there's 1,000 people applying for each one of these positions, that's potentially 4,000 to 5,000 candidates that I got to go through in a given period of time, usually like a week. That's a lot of information to try to sift through to try to find the right fits. Their goal is to try to get those 5 candidates in process in front of the hiring manager as quickly as they can because they're measured on a time to fill metric. So there's a clock that is ticking for the recruiter to try to get the position filled. So from the time that the job is open to the time that the job is filled, the recruiter is judged and graded. And if they don't do a good job at the time to fill metric, they're likely not going to keep their job for very long themselves. And once they get those, say, 5 candidates in front of the hiring manager, they'll effectively shut down the job posting, even though it's still collecting applications, but you're basically being placed into limbo because they just want to get that 5 through the process while they go off and work on these other roles. So a majority of people who are in a holding pattern or never hear back from an employer, even though they're well qualified for position, that's exactly what's happening. You're just in limbo. And if those 5 candidates don't work out for whatever reason, Then the recruiter will likely go back and revisit the job requisition, go through the rest of the candidates and find the next 5 to submit. So if we know this, we can start to use that information to our advantage. So let's visit with the resume for a second here. Go over and check out the job posting and make sure that you're realistically fitting a decent percentage of the role. Now, you don't have to be 100% match here, but I would say, especially in a competitive market, you should probably be at least a 70% fit for the role that you're applying to. And if you find that you're missing a lot of the things that they're asking for, and you think that a recruiter is just going to read into it or extrapolate some obscure experience that you may have had a couple of years back or something that you did in school, it's likely not going to be the case. So I would work on my fit first and foremost, and then making sure that I'm showing it in a very clear manner. And this means you actually need to know how to write a resume. And part of that is it structured clearly? Is your resume laid out in a way that makes sense, that's easy to read? And I will tell you, a majority of the resumes that I see come across my desk through career coaching or resume reviews, etc., there are some major issues that need to be cleared up. And there's no right or wrong way to write a resume. I think everybody's got their own opinions on it, but to me as a recruiter, there are ways that we want resumes to be laid out so that it gives us the best chance of putting you in the yes pile. And as you as the job seeker, that should be your goal. It's not about how pretty it looks. It's not about all the cool graphics and all the impressive stuff that you put on there, about everything that you've done in your career. We have a job at hand to try to get an aligned candidate in front of the hiring manager so that we can go on and work on the next one. And that should be your only goal as a job seeker, to deliver resumes that are well aligned. So that should be your goal, making sure that you're delivering a resume that is well aligned to the job that you're applying to. Ask yourself, are you hitting all the keywords and the phrases that are in the job posting? Now, I'm not saying every single one, but a reasonable amount of them. And if you say, yeah, I'm already doing all that stuff, but I'm still not getting callbacks, then to me, that shows that you've got some strategy issue and potentially a resume issue. But let's talk through the strategy here. If you're not getting callbacks, this is what I would do. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to be an early applicant. I'm going to try to be in the first 24 hours preferably, but 48 hours is probably the latest I would want to realistically apply for a new job. Because again, all the candidates come in the first 24 to 48 hours. And if you're day number 3 or day number 4 on that job posting, you're likely going to be candidate number 978. And again, if the recruiter has already found their first 5 candidates from candidate 1 through 100, you're likely not going to get seen for that role. And that's probably why you're getting a rejection 2 and 3 months later. Second thing you want to do is optimize your skills. If you're looking at job posting after job posting and you're realizing that you're missing a lot of stuff that the market is demanding, that's probably an indicator that you should go polish up your abilities, your skills on paper as best you can. You might have to get a little creative about it, but focus on filling those gaps. And if you're somebody that's currently working and starting to open up your job search, I would make sure that I check out the job postings first and see, are there any gaps that I currently have in my career profile that I need to get filled, and can I fill them in my current job? Because it's a lot easier to do that when you're working than if you're to try to go on the open market as an unemployed person and try to fill gaps. But I would also say, and this is going to be something that's going to drive people nuts, but I'm going to preach it till I'm blue in the face anyway. You have to make sure that your resume shows a clear fit. You have to remove anything that doesn't show that clear fit. And that means that you actually have to customize for the role. And I know that people roll their eyes every single time I mention this because it's cumbersome, it's burdensome, and yes, it kind of is. But you have to do this or you're not going to have any shot. And taking it to the next level, you want to be consistent. If you're only customizing sometimes, your results are going to be diluted, because it's really easy to just get into a bit of a lazy habit where you get one resume, you kind of like where it is, don't really want to go through the effort of customizing and tailoring your resume. You kind of start over time just using the same application, the same resume over and over again. And what you likely find is that your results get even worse over time. So we want to make sure that we're being consistent. I know it's a pain in the butt. And here's another thing. Everybody and their mother is using generic ChatGPT resumes. So literally employers are buried with the same exact resume over and over and over again. And because that's a pain point and so many people are relying on generic ChatGPT resumes that are actually diluting your results, I'm actually working on something exciting to help. So stay tuned on that. But the bottom line here is that there's no substitute for learning how to write a great resume, because this is going to springboard into all the future career activities that you do. And in my opinion, this is a core skill that everybody needs to learn how to do in their career. There is no other document in your career that will give more control over what kind of jobs you get, how long you're unemployed for, what your earning potential is, and how much money you leave on the table. Your resume is where it is at. So take the time to learn how to write a good resume. It's a worthy investment and something you'll use for the entirety of your career. And if you're struggling with your resume, make sure that you check out my course, Resume Rocket Fuel, which is designed from a recruiter's perspective. And I teach you exactly how to write a resume that a recruiter wants to read. And it's how I actually build my own resume when I'm applying for jobs. It takes you through each step of the resume writing process. I provide templates and examples, and I actually write my own resume in front of you. So if you're struggling, it's a great resource for that. Anyway, hopefully you found value in this video. I appreciate you watching, and we will see you on the next one.